Right, good evening everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee. Firstly, I'll ask the clerk who will advise how the meeting will be run this afternoon.
Thank you, Chairman. Please note that we are trialling hybrid meeting arrangements with registered speakers and councillors who are not members of the Planning Committee having the option to join the meeting via Zoom. So we do have both councillors and members of the public via Zoom. So welcome to our virtual room as well. We're also live streaming the meeting via the Council's YouTube channel to encourage more people to engage in our public meetings. The proceedings of the meeting will also be recorded. Please can I remind everyone to use their microphones when speaking and turn them off when finished. Please can attendees present in person refrain from watching the live stream or joining the Zoom link, as this will cause interference for other viewers. In accordance with the Constitution, members of the public who are registered to speak will be permitted to do so when invited by the Chairman. I have confirmed those entitled to speak prior to the start of the meeting. Speakers and planning officers, after you've addressed the committee, please ensure that your microphones are switched off. We are not expecting any fire alarm testing today. In the event of an evacuation, please leave by the nearest exit and gather in the car park next to the library opposite Tesco. Please ensure that your mobile phone and iPads are turned to silent. Each application will be dealt with in the following order. The planning officer will present the submitted application. At the end of the presentation, they will outline the proposed recommendation in full. Any speakers registered to speak on the application will be invited to address the committee in the following order. Speakers against, speakers from neighbourhood forums, any councillors who are not members of the committee, followed by speakers in support of the application. All speakers will have a maximum of 5 minutes to address the meeting. This will be followed by questions from members and responses from the planning officer. Once questions from the committee have concluded, the chairman will open the application for debate. At the conclusion of the debate, the chairman will seek a proposer and a seconder for the application. The proposal must be in full and include all information such as conditions or reasons. The chairman will then confirm with the planning officer if they wish to enter into a period of summing up. Members, if at any point during the meeting you have to leave during consideration of an application, you will be unable to vote on that application. I will now hand the chairing of the meeting to the chairman, Councillor Pentney. Thank you.
Thank you. And members, I am aware it's rather bitter today. That won't have escaped your attention. So if colleagues do want to put their coat on, I'll allow it tonight, given the cold weather. So, I'm just going to, upon the clerk's return, just ask for an update with regards to tonight's committee. I think we've got some apologies. Please, can the clerk advise?
Yes, Chairman, sorry, I was just closing the doors, had opened wide. We have apologies from Councillors Mills and Councillor Dart, and then we have Chris Lewis here instead of Councillor Jackie Thomas. Thank you.
Minutes, members, we need to confirm as a correct record the minutes of the meeting of this committee held on the 14th of November. Could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Hale's proposing, and a seconder, please. Councillor Barbara Lewis. All those in favour, please raise your hand. So those minutes are carried. Thank you very much. Declaration of interest. Do any members of the Planning Committee have any pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest on any of the items on today's agenda? Please raise your hand if you do. No? And likewise, officers, any pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest? No? Great. I'm not aware of any urgent items. So we'll move to the first application of this evening, which is Rowcroft Hospice, Avenue Road, Torquay, reference P2022-772. The clerk has confirmed that those speaking on this item are indeed here tonight, so I will ask Ms. Bagnan to give her presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for Rowcroft Hospice on Avenue Road, Torquay. This display showing the application site boundary, which encloses 9 hectares of hilltop within Torquay's built-up area. There are steep treed slopes around the site. To the west, They are not developed because it is very steep, but they are heavily treed. There is some residential use. Now, where's my mouse? There he is. To the south and to the east, and to the northwest is a wildlife area. This is how it appears on Google Maps. The driveway is this grey line which runs from the centre of the site down to the south and out onto Avenue Road. That's an in and out driveway. To the north, I've marked it with a red line so that it's visible because it's actually hidden by tree cover on Google Maps. An exit route, which is also an access for emergency vehicles only. It's also a walking and cycling route, and from this point it is joined by the national cycle route all the way to Shiffy Lane. This egress is not public highway, although it is council owned, and it's about 500 metres long, just so you can get the scale for it. The more level area at the top of the site here contains buildings. People arriving on the site who are familiar with it will recognise this as the driveway, which is an avenue of specimen trees. The site features many mature native and ornamental trees, and nearly all of them are protected by TPOs on the site, which number over 280. The site's an urban protected landscape area in the Torquay local plan. And partly because of the value of the landscape within the site, and partly because it is striking in the urban context as well. Okay, the three main buildings on the site at the moment are Main House, which is down here, which is the inpatients unit. To the north of that is an open green area, which was a kitchen garden at one point when the house was a residential property. This building in the middle is Mildmay. This was a stable block and now serves as an outpatients unit. This building here is Rainbow House, and behind it is a stone wall, which is clearly marked on this plan, with an orchard and a subterranean bunker which dates from World War II, which is many feet underground. The driveway runs through the site, linking buildings and leading all the way to the egress at the north. Okay. This site section shows the relative heights of the existing buildings on the site, so you can see that Rainbow House here is the highest building with a very distinctive roof. Mildmay is a lower single-storey building in the centre, and Main House 2-storey and quite stylish building in the south of the site. This is a picture of the best side of Main House facing south, which is its sunny side. And this is the current floor plan. The main entrance is actually on the east face. This is the original building, and around are various extensions, most of which are single-storey in this area, but this part is 2-storey. And it's a picture of the front elevation of the house. It's currently obscured by many trees which are not in a formal arrangement, that make it quite difficult to see the entrance to the house. Then north of that is the centre of the site, this open green area that I'd mentioned, with a retained kitchen wall from when it was a kitchen garden. And you can see the roof of the Mildmay Centre peeking over the top there. This is a drawing of the Mildmay Centre, and here's a photograph. It's in an arts and crafts style. It was mainly used for stabling, and although it stays intact externally, internally a lot has been changed around, and there are no sort of historic features retained. Beyond that is Rainbow House, which is a very distinctive green turreted roof. And the floor plan shows generous room sizes, currently used mainly for meeting rooms. The square section at the rear is lower in height, but it's built in similar materials to the main part, which is grey stone, orange-coloured quoins and a green roof, which may be why it's got its name, I don't know. This view is from Tor Hill to the east, and it shows that Rainbow House, over here, is on the higher land at the north of the site and is the highest structure, with its distinctive roof visible above the existing tree lines. So these are lines of very mature conifers, and there's pine trees here and some deciduous trees in between. Rocket House is the only building that's visible. So we come to the proposals for the site. It's easiest to describe them as 3 phases. Phase 1 is for a new care home, 60 beds, located in the centre of the site, also a village green and restaurant, a children's nursery for up to 37 children, 3 lodges for family and friends who've come some distance to see their relatives who are in the inpatient unit, and a workshop. So that's the same size as the existing workshop, but relocated down there. Phase 2 is the inpatient unit, which would provide 14 individual beds instead of 12 beds based on wards, and those would be in this purple area. The offices for the local Rowcroft headquarters would be on the back and upper floors, and the outpatient units would be moved to this area. And then phase 3 is for, in the north, remodelling Rainbow House and building assisted living units, so that 40 dwellings in total involved, together with communal facilities in the ground floor of Rainbow House. Just to clarify for the committee, the pedestrian and cycle link, which was part of the original proposal down here, and to which there were several objections, has been removed following a public engagement exercise undertaken by the applicants themselves. So just home in on the various aspects of the proposal. Phase 1, the care home, is 3 houses, 1, 2, 3, each with a courtyard garden and 20 rooms spaced over 2 floors. Each house has its own enclosed garden area, and many of the ground floor rooms have patios, and many of the first floor rooms have balconies. This part of the development involves 3 sort of commercial units. Here, a shop, hairdresser, and I think it's a music room, and a restaurant here with a terraced plaza. This village green area would be raised up slightly from what it is at present, and a village hall located below, which would be accessed by an internal lift and also by the existing and new pathways. The proposed style is 2-storey terraced domestic scale with pitched roofs. The ridge height would be subservient to the eaves of main house, just below the eaves there. There's a couple of elevations to demonstrate how that would be house 1, that would be house 2, and then the third house, which folds into an L shape round the green, is shown in profile there. And here's a detail of the type of colour scheme and materials that would be used. So they would reflect what's currently in main house, but they're quite subdued and recessive in nature. There's a computer-generated image, which are always useful. which demonstrates what it would look like once the vegetation had matured around it. The proposal for solar panels on the roofs would be behind the pitched areas, more within the courtyard areas, on flat areas of roof. And a section of the care home, restaurant, and the drop down to the village hall. This just gives you comparative heights of the buildings and the land. The nursery building would be low-lying with single aspect facing southeast. The playground would be surveyed from inside the building at several points and incorporated, but outside the actual nursery site area, is a lay-by for drop-offs and 3 designated disability parking spaces over this side, and about 17 or 18 echelon parking spaces on the opposite side of the road. This area has actually been redesigned to accommodate those dropping off and access aspects. So over to phase 2. This is the proposals for main house. Here would be the 14 inpatient bedrooms with a central space, and the inpatient area here. It's a bistro for the staff all working up here and visitors to the inpatients unit, and the offices would be at the back. Here's an elevation which shows the proposed main house and inpatient unit and the relative heights of the retained building compared with the new ones. This also shows, incidentally, how the care home would measure up. The inpatient unit ground floor houses the bedrooms. That's at this level. The lower ground level is a single aspect entrance for emergency and service vehicles, and the upper floor provides a viewing lounge and a viewing terrace, so that people within their beds would be able to go up there and see the views, which are quite impressive, I'm told. The slightly raised parapet would conceal solar panels, which would be used for this particular building. And if you were able to climb a pine tree along the driveway, this is the view you would get. This is a computer-generated image showing how the building would sit within the landscape. This includes redesigned formal gardens in this area, a more meadow-like environment here, which comes down to a soakaway pond feature. The existing car parking area, which is actually over here behind this hedge, would be extended to provide overflow car parking, which would be more green in nature. Exact materials not decided, but to be agreed through condition. Okay, on to phase 3. Rainbow House would be retained. The new build assisted living units, 35 of them, would be located in the orchard area where the land would be lowered. The underground bunker would be retained and its position reflected in a formal garden layout above. So Rainbow House would have communal facilities at ground floor and 5 flats above. The only changes externally would be these small dormers in roof level, which would, let's go to the main front elevation, would not be featured on the front elevation. So the domes and the pediment and the whole front elevation would be free of dormers. They've been rearranged to be tucked behind the chimneys where they wouldn't be easily seen at all. And in the walls, the only alteration is a patio door here, so that the communal rooms would have access to the formal gardens just outside, and up here a very fortunate flat would have a Juliet balcony facing Again, looking over the views over Torquay, which are quite impressive. These elevations show the relative heights of Rainbow House compared with the proposed new build assisted living units. The elevation shows the buildings appearing closer than they would actually be. In reality, the setback would result in better spacing with Pavilion 1, that's this one, set back at least 10 metres from Rocket House. There is a CGI coming which will give you a better idea. This is a close-up study showing the palette of materials that would be used. The simple style aims to not detract from Rainbow House and to tone with the existing colours or to recede. It's actually slightly more muted than Rainbow House itself. The parapet roof on the pavilion furthest from Rainbow House would conceal solar panels too. And here's the computer-generated image as seen from the far side of a newly excavated lake, which is currently a flat lawn. The boathouse would be retained. A new pontoon is shown, and details of that would be agreed through condition. So as you can see, a lot of the trees at the back of the site intended to be retained, and certainly shown as that on the plans. These sections illustrate the relative heights of buildings on the land. Rainbow House remaining the highest structure on the site, and all the new buildings sitting lower down. So on this section here you can see the care home lower than main house. And the next one shows the nursery sitting down below care home and much lower than Rainbow House. And here main house with the lodges set down on the far side of the road, again at lower level. This is from the submitted landscape and visual impact assessment. The dotted orange line along here, is that clear? Shows the impact of proposals on long distance views from Tor Hill. Main house would be over here, and the care home, they're both very clearly screened by the avenue of trees and existing planting on the site. The assisted living units would be here, and that's what this part of the orange line shows. They're screened subject to the retention of these tall conifers, which are in two groups. One is a line of Norway spruce and another is a line of Monterey cypress trees. And this plan is, sorry, the scale of it, but because the site is large, this is the only way I could get it all on one slide. The net impact, well, the gross impact of tree loss is 107 trees, and those are ringed in red on this plan. 14 are category A, 42 are category B, and 44 are category C. However, there's proposed replanting, and that's indicated on this plan with a schedule of the type of tree that would be used. The dark green dots along here, down here, and in the parking area are large trees, some of which grow to unknown heights. I think one of the proposed trees is a sequoia, which are well known for growing well over 40 metres plus. Will take some time though. And the smaller, paler green dots are more ornamental trees. The schedule here shows 90 large specimen trees and 35 smaller specimen trees being planted to replace the ones that are taken out. The ones with orange circles around may be affected during construction, and a method statement for each of those is being sought through condition on the recommended decision. This is a more illustrative landscaping scheme, which also includes where the ornamental gardens would be and where the lakes, that's the lake, another pond here and another pond here. It's partly for drainage and partly benefit for wildlife. And it also shows the parking distribution across the site in this area at the north for assisted living units. This area here relates more closely to Rainbow House and the top half of the care home. This area for the lower part of the care home, and disability parking here for getting to the main house, the existing car park slightly rearranged here, and the overflow car park there, which would achieve 179 spaces in all. So the main issues and considerations are listed here. They are considered in some length in the report, so I don't intend to run through them all now. I'll just summarise that the proposal would provide employment and health services, both of which are much needed in the Bay, and will produce a significantly positive impact overall. The scheme has been designed to minimise its impacts on heritage, although the loss of Mild may be considered a small heritage harm that has to be weighed against the benefits to the public of the nature of the scheme. And it would also minimise its impact on ecology through the ecological assessment and the mitigation works recommended in there. The main issues arising were landscaping and trees, but these have been resolved with the planting plan, subject to conditions securing more details and maintenance through landscape environment management plan. A second issue is highway safety and access. The main driveway would include passing places, and a plan has been submitted to identify where those would be. The egress treatment is to be determined by a road safety audit, and measures that result from that audit will be secured by Section 106. Those be basically some sort of improvement to pedestrian and cycle access. The applicant submitted a travel plan which can also be secured through Section 106 and includes an electric bus. It's suggested that if that is not provided, then sustainable transport contributions are sought instead through Section 106. And then thirdly, an issue was ecology and biodiversity, but we have had biodiversity net gain metrics submitted, which is satisfactory, and construction environment management plan and an ecological assessment are being secured through conditions. So I have here an update for committee with regards to the biodiversity comments from the county ecology advisor. He's made the following response: that whilst the proposal is not in line with the emerging national policy, which is for quite a high percentage, I think a 10% increase, that is not required at present, and the proposal does represent a net gain in biodiversity, which is compliant with the current local plan policy and the MPPF. So apologies that his response was received on the 6th of December, and just brought it to your attention today. These are the neighbourhood plan policies. The Section 106 obligations, I just summarised them here. It's recommended that some control over the occupation of the assisted living units to, I think it's age limit, and receiving a package care from Rowcroft themselves, so that would meet a particular need, with priority going to people from the Torquay area. So very unlikely to anyway, but doesn't cause a sudden rush to Torquay of people wanting to live in that accommodation. I'm also recommending contribution towards some form of improvement to the pedestrian and cycle access along the lane to Chiffey Lane, but that would be agreed through the road safety audit, which I've already mentioned, securing the travel plan and securing the shuttle bus, but if that's not possible, then a sustainable transport contribution to be paid. So my recommendation is approval subject to satisfactory completion of that road safety audit, satisfactory completion of Section 106 as outlined above, and the planning conditions outlined in the report, with final drafting being delegated to the Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergency. And fourthly, the resolution of any new material considerations that may come to light following Planning Committee to be delegated to the Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergency, including the addition of any necessary further planning conditions or obligations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pagden. Members, before I bring on a speaker from the Torquay Neighbourhood Forum, just to make you aware that whilst the formal status of the Torquay Neighbourhood Forum technically expired on Thursday, 8th of December this year, an application has been made to renew this, and on that basis, as Chairman, I have agreed to allow a presentation from the Torquay Neighbourhood Forum representatives on this application and some others this evening. So with that said, I will now invite our first speaker, which is from the Torquay Neighbourhood Forum, Mrs. Margaret Forbes-Hamilton, who joins us remotely.
Yes, good evening. This is a statement by the Torquay Neighbourhood Forum. This statement...
Sorry, Margaret, just for formality, just to let you know, you have a total of 5 minutes to address the committee, and I'll prompt you when you have 1 minute remaining, but obviously do make a start now, please.
Okay, thank you. This statement has been reviewed and approved by the steering group of the Torquay Neighbourhood Forum. Overall, the Forum is highly supportive of this scheme to expand the facilities of the hospice. However, we have raised a number of concerns in collaboration with the community partnership. We are pleased to report that there has been good engagement with both the Forum and the community partnership, and in general, these concerns have been addressed, in particular the concerns relating to the Crown Hill Park road link. The Forum supports the recommendation for approval subject to the listed conditions. That is the statement from the Neighbourhood Forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Ms. Forbes-Hamilton. I will call on our next speaker now, please, which is Mr. Mark Hawkins, please, if you'd like to come forward. Welcome to the committee, Ms. Hawkins. Like all the speakers, you will have a total of 5 minutes to address the committee, and I'll prompt you when you have 1 minute remaining, but otherwise make a start when you're ready to do so.
Thank you. I'm going to time myself also. So I'm Mark Hawkins, Chief Exec of Rowcroft Hospice. Delighted to be invited along and speak, especially when it's our 40th anniversary this year. So we're immensely proud to present the plans on behalf of the hospice. We're immensely proud as a hospice to care for our community and provide specialist end-of-life care to 2,000 patients per annum, 24/7, 7 days a week across 300 square miles of South Devon. A specialist team of nurses, doctors, social workers and therapists are dedicated to making every day the best it can be for our patients and their families living with life-limiting illnesses. However, we only care for about 1 in 3 in our community who need us. We need to invest in more care, and we need to invest and need to be able to generate additional income so we can care for more of our community. We're also trying to operate a 21st century operation in a 19th century building. It leaks, the floors are lifting, radiators are blaring away with windows that open. It's also a ward-based model, which is particularly difficult in the pandemic. When one patient's positive, we have to isolate everybody in the ward. We want, therefore, to remodel the hospice to create a wonderful new facility with 14 single rooms, all en suite, all with the latest technology, and facilities to give greater dignity and independence to our patients, and to enable families to stay close overnight in lodges. Every bed is designed to be able to access the gardens, and we also propose a wonderful sky garden. Imagine the scene with patients with their families and their loved ones in the sky garden overlooking Torquay as the sun sets and the birds are tweeting. Truly magical. In addition, we propose new specialist dementia nursing home and assisted living apartments to meet the crying need in the local community. The nursing home is designed as a world-class best practice households of 10 with a nursery for 37 young people. And I want those young people to interact daily with those residents of the nursing home. I'm very passionate about intergenerational care. The nursery will also assist with the recruitment and retention of staff. Imagine how we could ease the pressure on Torquay Hospital on council services with 60 new beds in a nursing home and housing stock of assisted living apartments. We also know from research there was predicted 50% increase in people over 65 living with dementia by 2030. These facilities are for the community, but they will also generate income, so we as a hospice can care for more patients. A huge benefit for the community overall. Throughout our design, we've responded sensitive to the wonderful gardens and landscape we have. In fact, we want to enhance our landscape even further from the predominance of just grass and trees with wonderful gardens throughout. We want to create an oasis of horticulture. We have consulted far and wide to develop a plan which is exemplar of care across the development and also to ensure we are a shining light in terms of sustainability. We wish to be operationally carbon neutral and propose ground source heat pumps and PV on the roofs. We have been through a pre-application process with early officer input and consultation and with a review undertaken by the local design review panel. We also researched extensively with our community and consulted extensively with our community, either the NHS, the local residents, and more widely. We advertised massively through our TV, through local media and radio and press to ensure that we can invite as many people during that consultation process. We have also addressed the many technical issues from landscape and key views, trees, ecology, heritage, access and highways. The Highway Authority have confirmed that parking levels are acceptable.
1 minute remaining.
A parking management plan will be secured as a condition and the green travel plan include an expanded cycle. There were also benefits to the local community from a world-class care to increased accessibility, green travel plans, breathing new life into historic buildings with over 100 new jobs created also and developing landscape into beautiful gardens. As a charity, I'm sure I don't need to tell you every penny counts and we have to invest wisely for the future. I believe that a thorough assessment by officers and a well-considered recommendation has been proposed, which I wholeheartedly support. I urge members to support our vision to create something really special for our community, just not for now, but for future generations, to create a wonderful new hospice to give patients and families the best possible experience at end of life, create a world-class dementia home and intergenerational care and wonderful assisted living apartments. Thank you for the opportunity to present. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Members, we have no further speakers, so we move to questions for the case officers. So I'll take it in this order: Councillor Hill, Councillor Lewis, and then Councillor Manning. But Councillor Hill, please.
Thank you, Chairman. When we went around the site today, it was Mid-May House, the arts and crafts style, Mid-May block, the arts and crafts style place, with the stable blocks inside with the arched doorways the stables would have been, I assume, for the individual horses. Was there any thought or consideration of keeping that building? Because I believe it's going to be removed and concrete blocks. Dreary.
We obviously...
Sorry, this is a question to the case officer. Sorry, we cannot take... thank you for your contribution, but it's for the case officer. Thank you.
Yes, there was a heritage assessment undertaken and submitted with the application, and survey was done of the Mildmay block. Internally, it had been rearranged a lot and extended, and ceilings installed, so that much of the initial layout was sort of lost. So in terms of heritage value, it wasn't given a very high significance, although it obviously has some, as a remnant from when the horses were stabled there for the Willis family. Externally, it is quite a stylish building, and the loss of it is considered to be a heritage harm. But in the planning balance, and according to the NPPF, the National Planning Policy Framework, heritage harms need to be weighed against any public benefits of the scheme. And in this case, the public benefits of the scheme in terms of health provisions for residents of Torquay are considerable and are felt to outweigh that particular loss, especially considering that Rocket House and Main House are being retained.
Rainbow House.
Rainbow House, sorry. It's the roof form, it makes me think of rockets, that's all.
Okay. Okay. Councillor Chris Lewis.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I mean, clearly this is one of the biggest developments we've had at the planning for some time, a major development. Can the officer tell us, I think you did in your presentation with the orange line, does it have any major effect on any other near properties or properties that can be overlooked? It looked from that diagram that you put through with the orange line and the trees that it didn't, but have we had any objections or any comment on being overlooked?
We didn't have any objections about overlooking. No, the site itself each boundary is thick with trees. I've got, where do I do this? This is a picture, oh, it's not showing. What do I do? Stop slideshowing.
Yeah, don't worry.
Anyway, I have photographs, but I don't seem to be able to get
I just wanted confirmation that I hadn't missed anything. I didn't think I had. So
no, I had a comment from a lady who lives to the north of the site. She was a bit concerned that a lot of trees were going, but the beech trees that are on that northern boundary are shown as retained. So
yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Manning, your question, please.
With this building going on, is it going to affect the residents staying there at the moment? And if so, how will they cope with the building going on with them still in there?
I seem to have lost control of my slideshow. I don't know quite what's happened, but I would show you where the site location plan. Someone help. Do you know which button I have to press? I don't know what I did there. I do apologise for the delay in my response on this. So this is impact on housing around from the extra traffic, was that? Yeah.
I just wonder if it's going to affect the people there already with this building going on, where they're going to be moved to, or, you know, what kind of effect will it have on them?
Yes. Yes. So the existing residents, at the moment the driveway does provide access to other residential units along here. There's Bird Haven here and Highview, I think it's called that, here. And obviously they share this driveway. So while there's construction traffic going up and down, which will be patients, oh, okay. That will be coming past the hospice and be starting to work on phase 1. So phase 1 is in the centre of the site. It's away from the ward rooms, which are in the south side of main house, looking out over the driveway. So people in the wards will, it depends on their hearing, but they may hear the traffic going up and down, and they may hear some construction activities, but we're asking for construction management plans to be submitted prior to commencement of development for each phase. So we would be able to consult with Rowcroft about when, well, they'll be advising us when they think it's appropriate to be building. But also the shared driveway down here, the existing residents in these properties will be looking for the construction management plan to take their living conditions into account as well.
Thank you very much. It wasn't just that, it's the actual people, their beds that are staying in the hospitals at the moment, when they're going to make that from I think it's 9, is it, into 14, what is going to happen to the patients while they're doing that kind of work? Are they going to move them, or what they're going to do, where they're going to move them to?
Councillor Manning, if I may, I suspect that's a lot of the reasoning for the phased nature of this development, because as you saw this morning, it's been done in 3 distinct phases, and I imagine a lot of that is around minimising disruption to existing residents, but obviously Ms Bagnan might have more to add.
Yes, phase 1 of the care home, phase 1 is the care home, and the idea from my advice from the applicant is that the people who are in, once the first phase of the care home, which is nearest to main house, which is 20 beds, has been constructed, the people who are in the inpatients unit would be moved across into that new accommodation. So their care would continue and not be interrupted. And then the next phases of the care homes would be built, and then the new inpatient unit.
Councillor Barbara Lewis, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just an easy one for me. There's 170, sorry, I've lost my glasses, 176 car parking spaces. How many of them have got electric points in them? Because, I mean, if you've got people coming to visit from far away with the electric vehicles at the moment, will there be adequate electric vehicle points, please?
The requirement is for 20%, I think, of spaces to be provided with electric vehicle charging points, and that's the subject of a condition, or a recommended condition.
So roughly about 35.
180 divided by 5. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Members, any further questions? Councillor Hill, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's the piece of road that's council owned leading to Shippey. It comes from the Rowcroft, there's a gate and then there's a road. Obviously you're asking for 106 money to do some work on that. Are you going to ask that the fence be built along the precipice that's to the right-hand side of it? Because that is pretty dangerous when we were there.
The The reason for asking for a road safety audit is to ascertain what would be a safely designed route, and that consideration would need to include the surface, where the line is drawn, what share of width the different modes are given, and also whether barriers are a necessary thing.
Right.
So it would be a safety consideration that would be
come
taken
under
into
the
account.
road safety audit then?
Yes.
Jolly good. That's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Kennedy, obviously I'll bring in your question shortly. Just make it clear, obviously you won't be able to vote on this application, but you can question and debate on it. Your question, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to first apologise for my tardiness. I got caught up in another meeting. And I am very supportive of this application, but I do have a question, a legal question actually, if we can get that from our legal advisor. So given the rights of the public under the Aarhus Convention, which is access to information, public participation in decision making and access to justice in environmental matters, do you think that when our judges state in their summation the consequent need for effective public participation, access to information and transparency in decision making, they would find updating members at a committee meeting immediately prior to a decision making or uninterpreted technical information fits that criteria?
Well, Chairman, there's probably a lot of questions involved in that. The simple answer is it's a question of fact according to the particular circumstances as to what the update is about, how important it is, what relevance it is to the matters in hand. So really it's a question of fact. In terms of, and it's essentially an administrative job for the committee to decide whether it is satisfied with the process that has gone on, and if the committee is not so satisfied, then it can adjourn consideration of the matter for further information or further details, as it has done in the past. In terms of general consultation, the applications are advertised initially and open to consultation. Where there are changes to the application, then it's a matter for the committee, for the council rather, as planning authority, to decide whether any further consultation on that is provided. In terms of the results of that consultation and reports from the consultees, then those are reported to committee, and it's not unusual for the committee to be updated on consultation responses from a whole range of people. The police, the highways, etc. It's a regular occurrence for the committee to be updated from the consultees before and even at the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Catterall.
Sorry.
Have a question, Councillor Kennedy?
I don't think that was, the Aarhus Convention is particularly on the environmental matters, which are specific, and there are specific public requirements. But if, I'll take your advice on that, because if Torquay Council is challenged on environmental matters, at least we've sought legal advice. Thank you.
I just add, Chairman, that in determining the planning applications, most of the issues are environmental. They may not be to do with birds and bees, but in general sense, they're all environmental issues.
Any further questions, members? If not, we'll move to debate. Councillor Chris Lewis, please.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. As I said when I asked my question, this is one of the biggest developments we've seen for a long time, and I would say one of the most important planning applications we've also had. We all know Rowcroft and what a good job they do, and how from the room. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Councillor Chris Lewis, and once we're at that stage, I will come back to you first. I've got Councillor Manning and then Councillor Dudley, but Councillor Manning first.
I'd like to second that. I think I went up there today and looked round and saw their plans, and I think it's a beautiful place, and I think we're lucky in Torquay to have a place like that. And I think people at the end of their life to have such a lovely place to go to, it's not a place you want to go to, but if you go there, it's a nice place to finish your life off. I think, honestly, and I'd be only too pleased to second it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Manning, and likewise, I'll come to you as a seconder once we're at that stage. Councillor Dudley, please.
Thank you. I would also like to say I'm very supportive of the application, and I would like to thank the planning officer for the way that she presented the case this afternoon. But I think it's something that will benefit the area quite considerably. Thank you.
Okay. Is this? I'm hearing a chorus of approval, but Councillor Hill, do you have a new point to add?
No, other than to say that as a committee we're not in a position to comment on the medical needs as whether it was the dementia homes and the gardens that they're proposing within the blocks, or the end of life care that they're supplying. But it was it looked at when we were there as a very professional layout. And a very, a very caring organisation. So once again, I've got no problems with it. One thing I would ask is that when we were leaving the site on the coach, we had to back up a considerable way because there were no passing places going down the road because another car was coming towards us. And there's going to be passing places. Now, I should have asked this earlier, are they just for the duration of the build, or are they permanent?
They would be permanent. I have got a diagram, but
not necessary.
My PowerPoint
they were pointed out.
Presentation wouldn't allow me to put any more information in. So it's on a second one, which I'm not able to go up on the screen, but there's a series of 5 or 6 places along the driveway that can be made wider to allow passing.
Oh, that's fine. That sort of circles the whole environment, the whole concept of it. Then, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna, because we do seem to be in a chorus of agreements, I'm going to move, go back to Councillor Chris Lewis, who indicated that be willing to propose this one.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I propose approval as per the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
And Councillor Manning, you still willing to second that?
Yes, I'm still willing to second that, and the same thing with the
as per the officer's report. Yeah. Okay. And unless the case officer's got anything further to add, I'm quite happy to move straight to the vote on this one. So members, we have a motion for approval as per the recommendation in the officer's report. All those in favour, please raise your hand. So, and that's unanimous of those eligible to vote on this item. Thank you. So that application is carried. I'm conscious that Mr. Jones is the officer on the next one. Do we require an adjournment just to allow a handover? Okay, 5 minutes? Okay, colleagues and members of the public, we'll take 5 minutes adjournment whilst our next officer gets set up. Okay, members, will resume the meeting now. So the next application to consider is that of the former Shedden Hall Hotel on Shedden Hill Road, Torquay, reference P 2021-1314. Once again, the speakers on this item have been confirmed as here, so I'll ask Mr. Jones to give his presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is an outline application which is principally detailed, and only landscaping is reserved for future consideration. So it's seeking detailed approval for access, appearance, layout and scale. So this is the site outlined in red. It's the former site of the Shedden Hall Hotel off Shedden Hill, above the car park to the west. So this slide just shows a bit of the location of the site. To the west you have a mixture of open space and leisure facilities around Tor Abbey and the tennis club and car park. To the east you've got a mixed residential form of development around Warren Road and St Luke's area. And it's not far from the seafront, obviously around that area, and also quite close to the town centre. So it's in a quite central and sustainable location for residential use. So this slide principally just shows the local plan designations for the site. This is the site, hatched in grey, just identifying it as an identified housing site. The green area around here is the edge of the core tourism investment area, focusing around the hotels and leisure facilities around Tor Abbey. The blue there obviously signifies how close it is to the designated town centre, and the red hatchings principally show it's in a conservation area as well. So this is the neighbourhood plan designations. Again, that's identifying it as a housing site, and also the light green, just again marking it as the edge of the core tourism investment area. You also got the leisure and sports facilities around the Riviera Centre. So just moving on to the site itself, this is a street view from this year, looking down the Shedden Hill Road towards the sea. There's remnants of the building in the top corner of the site. Other than that, the site is cleared following fire damage around 3 or 4 years ago. I believe the site was cleared in around 2019, and before that it sat empty since 2009 when the previous hotel use ceased. So this is a slightly older street view for members, just to appreciate what used to be on the site. So you've got the Shedden Hill Hotel, obviously it was an extended villa here, and then you had a historic wing lower down at this point. So it was higher than the property adjacent as the flow of the properties rose and then fell towards the coast. So this is an older street view from the lower end of the site, showing the established entrance and also the hotel and wing. Just moving on from slightly further context, we have the Heritage Hotel, Applebee's building here. So the site is this vacant area here. And you'll just notice the context of large buildings set on the hillside around Warren Road and above. And this building here, obviously rendered slate-topped mansard. And you just notice the Grade 2 Star St Luke's Church there in the background, which is around 60 to 70 metres away from the site. This is an older aerial view, again, just to provide some context for members. So we have the access point here. Obviously the site goes down and abuts a public right-of-way that runs between the site and the car park. And you had the bulk of the villa obviously pushed on the higher part of the site historically. Just some pictures of the site that were supplied with the application of the building in place before it was removed. Just provide some understanding of the topography, where it slopes quite steeply down from the entrance and Shedden Hill Road. So this is looking up, obviously, at the building in the top corner. And then this is the existing access road down that served the previous hotel. The bottom right picture probably provides you with the greatest context in terms of the level risers, where you'll see obviously the previous building set quite high above the lower end of the site, and also the properties on the roads inland sitting much higher again. So moving on to the application, it's an outline application with only landscaping reserved for 25 apartments which are arranged in 2 buildings. The access point is to utilise the existing access that served the previous hotel use. And there is parking proposed within 2 lower ground floors of the lower block. So this block here has 2 lower ground floor parking bays. So the upper floor is accessed halfway down the access road in, and then the lower ground floor parking, you sweep down to the bottom of the site and enter from the bottom. There is a prominent turkey oak within the site, which is this here on the indicative drawing, which is to be retained as part of the scheme. And it seeks to reflect the run of villas that flow from Croft Road to Shedden Hill and down towards, obviously, the Heritage Hotel. So this is the proposed layout. As I say, it's arranged in 25 apartments in 2 buildings. We've got the retained tree here, and then you've got the access down through. There's some visitor parking spaces here along the bottom, 3. And then you've got 2 buildings arranged to address Shedden Hill Road, and then provide vistas out towards Tor Abbey area. Between the buildings there will be landscaped areas, and here and just moving through that, just talk you through the key elements of the scheme. So this is the very lower ground floor, which is accessed from the low point here and provides parking, which will then provide staired and lift access up through the building. There are also bike stores and bin storage between the 2 buildings. And as this is the lower building of the 2, obviously there are no subsequent floor area for the upper building here. So moving up, this is the higher of the 2 parking floors, which is accessed halfway down the road. Again, got parking. So there are 35 spaces within the scheme in total for 25 apartments. That includes a degree of visitor spaces and also disabled spaces. So moving up, we have the arrangement of the apartments. There are small balcony areas and areas of landscaping where the levels permit, and we have an access through to the street. And just moving up through the development. So all apartments are very generously provided in terms of floor space, exceeding the national space standards, and have good outlooks out towards the Torquay Abbey Meadows area. So just moving up through the scheme, we have the upper floor of the lower building of the two here, which is recessed to sit as a roof element, and it's finished in a different material, with the lower floors finished in render and the upper floor in a grey slate. This is to echo the roof elements of the Victorian villas. And this is the very uppermost story of the higher building of the two here, again set in to sit as a roof element and finished in a dark grey slate as well. Just see the relationship with the Turkey Oak here, where the buildings have been arranged to afford sufficient space for its retention. And just a sectional view here showing how it sits with the properties on high ground, and also how the two buildings stagger down towards the Heritage Hotel. So these are the key front and rear elevations. At the bottom part of the slide, we've got the elevations that address Shenna Hill Road. So we've got sort of 2 to 3 stories of render with the roof element as well. And we've got some comparative outlines of some historic permissions on this site. So we have the pink line here, which was a permission for a standalone building aside the existing, or the then existing villa. And the light blue was a different scheme providing a row of terraced townhouses. So the current proposal is around 2.2 metres higher than the previous villa on the right hand side, and around 2.8 metres higher than the higher of the two previous consents, the pink line. Proportions are there to try and reflect, Victorian villa typology, but in a modern arrangement, with vertical emphasis to windows, say render as the main material, and a darker roof element. To the rear, there is a plinth which will be finished in a darker render, but this will be largely obscured from most of the public views due to the heavy vegetation along the boundary with the car park, and how the general site interacts with the land to the lower side around the seafront. But the render is there to provide a sort of a plinth base to the buildings, and reflect some of the how buildings sit in the hillside. So this is a contextual view with the buildings to either side, and also the larger buildings that step up the hillside behind the site. Shows how it sort of reflects that layered arrangement of development around the hill in that area of Torquay. Notice it rises as per the previous. Get back. It rises from the adjacent property as per the previous villa, and then obviously drops down to try and integrate with the Heritage Hotel on the seaward side. Just some side elevations here to show how the levels of the site change and how the building interacts in terms of scale with the Shenna Hill Road and also its curtilage on the inward side. And there's just two of the internal elevations here that will face each other between the two buildings where there's some landscaping in between. So the applicant has provided some indicative comparison images of the existing and proposed for members. Since this was produced, the officers have discussed the height with the agent, and there's been a reduction by 600 mil for both buildings by reducing the upper floor area heights. So the buildings will actually sit slightly lower than these, but this is obviously how can show members how the flow of the buildings will generally work as you approach it from the town centre and down Shedden Hill Road. And this is a comparison view produced from the main junction by Torquay Abbey Sands. See the two buildings here. So there has been some discussion about how the buildings are potentially viewed as a singular mass, and there is a condition that we have discussed with the agent about a colour scheme to be submitted and approved to try and provide some individual identity to each of the buildings and try and separate the proposed mass and how they're viewed from further afield. But as you see, obviously large buildings on the hillside is a characteristic of the area anyway. And for members, obviously this is a longer view. I think you'll see the buildings do blend in with obviously the variety of tonal large buildings that are staggered along the hillside. The committee report obviously covers all the key issues in detail. I've just highlighted 3 here in bold for members. Obviously the principle of development is much supported. It's in a very sustainable location, close to the town centre, access to sustainable travel modes and facilities, and is an identified house for site for housing in the development plan. In terms of heritage design and visual impact, there has been some obviously discussions with the agent to try and reduce the scale of the building, try and break up its mass, and as mentioned, there has been as much a reduction as possible, and there is obviously the proposal to try and provide some colour conflict in appropriate tones to break up the development. I say there is some concern on the height through the council's conservation advisor internally, but in the context it is less than 3 metres higher than previous consents on the site, and when considered in the round, it's considered an acceptable design and outcome in terms of design. In terms of affordable housing, the application was submitted proposing no affordable housing for viability grounds. There has been some extensive discussions with an independent advisor on that matter, and it's proposed that a Section 106 covers a later stage review of the affordability of the scheme to deliver affordable housing in line with the council's policy, and that is within the recommendation to members. So the officer recommendation is one of approval, subject to agreement of an acceptable provision of affordable housing or the provision of an affordable housing review clause within a Section 106 legal agreement, which is signed within 4 months of the committee date, and in the absence of this being secured, or the reasonable progress being made to be refused, delegated to the Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergencies, along with the conditions as outlined within the report, with final drafting of conditions delegated to the Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergency, and the resolution of any new material considerations that may come to light following Planning Committee, again to be delegated to the Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergency, including the addition of any necessary further planning conditions or obligations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. So we now move to speakers. Firstly, I'm going to welcome back, albeit remotely, Margaret Forbes-Hamilton to the committee. Welcome back, Margaret. Once again, you will have a total of 5 minutes to speak, and I'll prompt you when you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you, Chair. Statement by the Torquay Neighbourhood Forum. This statement has been reviewed and approved by the steering group of the Torquay Neighbourhood Forum. The Forum is pleased to see that this derelict eyesore site is being proposed for development. It is a good use of brownfield land and will provide much needed housing. Kay Elliott have engaged with us and shared their proposals at a meeting of the steering group. The Forum would prefer to see on-site provision of affordable housing, but we will reluctantly accept a Section 106 contribution for provision elsewhere. We hope that the viability review will not result in this contribution being waived, as Torquay is desperately short of affordable housing. With regards to parking, the tandem arrangement is somewhat of a compromise. We can foresee issues when a vehicle on an inner space is obstructed, so in practice the proposal does not meet the standard. However, this is mitigated by the proximity to the town centre and access to public transport, and can be managed by appropriate assignment of spaces to individual dwellings and visitors. The Forum appreciates concerns raised about the overall height and design compared with neighbouring buildings and the impact on the conservation area. However, in view of the housing need, we can accept the proposed design given the range of sizes and styles within the area. The Forum notes the potential for noise from Applebee's, the entertainment venue next door, disturbing the residents of Shedden Hall. We recommend that appropriate soundproofing is provided in the construction to reduce the impact of noise. This was noted when Kay Elliott met with the steering group. In conclusion, the Forum supports the recommendation for approval, subject to the listed conditions. That is a statement. Having heard from Mr. Jones about the reduction in the overall height, I will feed that back to the Forum by email to all members of the steering group. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Forbes-Hamilton. I now invite Mr. Tribble or Mr. Wilson to come forward, please. Welcome to the committee. So you'll be sharing your 5 minutes between you. I understand you'll be speaking in support of the application. I'll prompt you when you have 1 minute remaining, but otherwise make a start when you're ready to do so.
Thank you. I wanted to share with you some of the approval history of the site and how this application is similar to the previous approvals and what's been happening in the background, as clearly this is an important site for the community to be developed. There are 2 key approvals on the site which set the context for the current application. The first in 2011 for the scheme with 2 separate buildings, both similar in height to today's application, and the second in 2016 which was approved, which looked to create denser development along Shedden Hill. So why didn't the last approval progress? Well, unfortunately, as a result of the fire and the demolition, the approval lapsed, resetting the entire application process. Today's application is most similar to the 2011 approval, creating 2 building masses on the site. As a brownfield site, identified in both the local plan and the neighbourhood plan for residential development, it makes sense to increase density here, near the town centre with all of its services, and not develop greenfield sites elsewhere in Torquay. This formed the basis of our pre-application discussions in July of 2020 for 35 units, and the planner's response in December supported the principle, but asked us to consider reducing the number of units and apartments, which we did. The planning submission was reduced to 25 units and was submitted a year ago in December 2021 and validated in May this year. Both the client and Kay Elliott's have worked with the planning department for the past 7 months to bring the application to committee today with a recommendation for approval. Without approval today, the current economic climate, there's a real possibility that the site may not come forward in any realistic time. To put the current planning application process in context, it's taken us 2.5 years to get to this point. This is an allocated brownfield site with the support of both the Neighbourhood Forum and the Community Partnership. It's able to contribute to Torbay's 5-year housing land supply and has the full support of the consultees and committee. Recommendation for approval from the planning consultant, and we hope that you can support it too. Would you like to?
It's only a little bit of background for the benefit of the committee. I'm sure most of the people here will have a reasonable knowledge of the site itself. My particular interest came to light in 2015 when I and a group of other local people decided that we would try and move the Shedden Hall on. Unfortunately, that was curtailed in June 2019 after we'd done the preliminary works, which included the outer demolition of the small additional buildings, putting up a temporary roof and repairing all the structural weaknesses in the main villa, which at that time was integral to the project being converted. An arsonist broke into the building at some point in the evening, the early June, and literally brought the whole thing crumbling down. Since then, with the help of Kay Elliott and the local planning department, we've tried to bring the site forward again so we can move back to where we hoped we were going to be about 3 years ago.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Triple and Mr. Wilson. Members, I now invite questions for the case officer. I'll take Councillor Hill first and then Councillor Manning.
Thank you, Chairman. There's a couple of issues. When we were at the site, there was concern over the height of the building. You've mentioned it once or twice here, and we tried to identify what height it would be, looking at the height of the lampposts and trees to get a clear view of what would be seen and what wouldn't, and it doesn't. And you've taken it down as much as you can, as far as you're concerned, as an authority.
Yeah, so we discussed the opportunity to reduce the height with the agent, and because of that, they've looked principally at floor-to-ceiling height within the development. But because the access is fixed at sort of street level and through the parking, it was only the upper floors that could be reduced. So the 3 upper floors have been reduced to still provide sort of a pleasant internal ceiling height, but do as much as they can in terms of reducing. But it is a balanced judgment on height. Obviously you'll see on this slide here, it's slightly higher than previous approvals. But you've got a sort of a look at the scheme in the round. It does follow the general flow of the rise and fall of large buildings along that run of Croft Road and Shedden Hill Road. It's slightly higher than what was there before and what's been previously consented. But you've got, obviously there are the public benefits of bringing forward an identified site, providing housing units, the regeneration aspects of that in terms of obviously jobs through the construction phase and future spend as well. So I think officers' general view in the end was that it's an acceptable increase over what's previously been established, and the harm is limited.
Thank you. Councillor Manning, please.
How the road is outside, it's quite narrow there. How is the collections going to be for the dustbins and that? Will they be from collecting outside, or will we going inside where they make it, or what?
Yeah, so obviously the road within the site won't be adopted. It'll be a private access. There has been discussions with Swissco about an indemnity to allow their local authority waste collections to access the site and the lower bin stores, and that's been agreed in principle with the waste and recycling officer side in Swissco and the applicants.
Councillor Kennedy, please.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I've got a couple, well, 2.5 questions. How much is 600 mil? Show me. Okay. Okay, thank you. Right, I'm a little bit confused because you've got a section in your report about the conservation officer's, response. I can't find that in the portal, so I can't find his full details or the full. Is that all of what he said in your report? I'll try and find. It's page 64.
Yes, I'm as certain as I can be that that's his full response.
Thank you. So it's unclear as well because I can't find it on the portal, it's unclear when that advice came, whether it was before or after Historic England, because Historic England are saying that you know, as a local authority, we can make that decision, and our conservation officer is recommending that we go to Historic England. So it's a little bit sort of what comes first, and did we go back to Historic England?
So my understanding is that Historic England commented first, and these were subsequent comments from the conservation officer. And obviously the recommendation to members, as I mentioned within the presentation, was that there is some concern from the conservation arm. But you've got to take the scheme in the round, and yes, there's some slight tension in terms of the height, but the increase is considered acceptable in the round.
Sorry, Mike. The other bit that's got me confused is going to the your conditions. I'd like you to take me through it slowly so I can understand it. Is the affordable housing what you've said? So I'm just going to find it because the wording has me a bit confused. Oh, now I can't find it. Are you had the slide, didn't you? So are you able to put the slide back up for me, please?
Is this the recommendation? Yeah. Yes, yeah. Sorry.
So, agreement of an acceptable provision of affordable housing, or the provision of an affordable housing review clause within a Section 106 agreement. So, are we saying that has there been any Section 106 negotiations so far?
So there was a couple of rounds of review with the third-party independent assessor. The final conclusions of that was that there is potential scope that it could be more profitable, and hence it may be able to provide affordable housing. So that was presented. So those conclusions have been presented. There is initial agreement to some form of late review clause, deferred obligation, to look at the scheme again. This was worded with the potential that, well, actually, they may come forward and say we can offer some affordable housing. So, but it's at the moment the response is that they would be accepting to a clause within a legal agreement, which has been described as a late review clause in some of the terminology there.
So is that sort of like, is that around viability and a condition on that once it's built? what's the word I'm looking
yeah.
for? You know, when you revisit the viability.
Yes, yeah. So basically see whether there's greater values within the scheme than presented. There were some conclusions about there may be some savings in terms of the build costs as well. So it's principally to see whether the values are higher than what's suggested.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Any further questions, members? Councillor Hill, please.
Sorry for all the questions, but the highways is just talking about car parking within the site. Has there been any issues with vehicles leaving or proposed leaving or entering the site? Because that's on a difficult road on Shedden Hill. Because we've had the issues before on other developments where there's been a substantial number of vehicles leaving a property, and there have always been issues with it. There seems to be no mention on this.
Yeah, so there's no raised concern from the Highway Authority in terms of the safety of the access. It does use the historic access that served the hotel, so there would have been, obviously over a period of time, sort of the hotel use as well. So it hasn't been raised as an issue. It's obviously quite a central road, which may have quite slow speeds. But yeah, it's not something that's been raised by the Highway Authority.
Okay.
If there's no further questions, members, we'll move to the debate stage. Any debate? Councillor Chrysler's, please.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. 2 points, really. I think on the affordable housing, we caught a cold over the last 10 years, I think, on making sure that we did get affordable housing, and this is a prime site. I'm not saying it should be on this site, but we certainly in section 106, we should look at the viability. In the report, it says twice that there should be enough money there for affordable homes. So I think we should make sure that we do investigate that once we're in a position to do so. But on a more positive note, I think this has been on a blot on the landscape for far too long. Anyone who goes up Shedden Hill, we want to be the premier resort not only in Europe but in the whole of the world. If we are to get that far, we need to have these prime sites being developed. And the one thing I would hope, if it gets approval at this committee meeting tonight, that actually the developers get on with it and get it built as soon as possible, because the sooner it is built, the better the image for the residents, the visitors, and the businesses, the people in Torquay, the better. So very positive. I think we should approve it, and I just hope the developers get on as soon as possible. Thank you.
And before I bring in Councillor Kennedy, I would echo a lot of that as the actual local ward councillor. Obviously I'm familiar with a lot of other hotels in the area's concerns about that site and that as well. And if we are minded to approve it tonight, I think that message that Councillor Chris Lewis gave of, please get on and do this will be one felt by many of the local residents as well. I mean, it is regrettable, the 106, and I have thoughts about viability processes, but I'll park that and just think about, if you are minded members to move this, I would hope that the development physically happens in a timely fashion. Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. I think I do agree with Councillor Lewis on a great deal of what you've said. I think I do have concerns with from the Conservation Officer stating that there are issues, albeit not amounting to substantial harm, but there is harm nonetheless. And I think considering all things considered, basically in the main, if we had that 106 affordable housing, if we could get that sorted out, I think that would put it back into balance, if it makes sense. So I think on its own, without that coming through, I think there is harm there on the conservation area, but maybe not so substantial that we can, if we actually had something that contributed to the area's lack of affordable housing, that could bring it back into perspective.
Any other debate, members? If not, is that more debate, Councillor Chrysalis?
Well, the only thing I would say is very positive, and I'd like to propose approval, please.
Councillor Manning?
Yep, I'll second that as well.
You're indicating?
Is there anything that we can say as a committee to strengthen the
106.
affordable housing 106 that's written in there? That to me, I don't know whether I'm just reading that not particularly well, but it doesn't come across as being that strong that we're going to be getting, you know, the contributions. I'd like to see some say something about, you know, pushing that into stronger wording.
So what the 106 is seeking to achieve, well, just going back a step, so the key issue, correct me if I'm wrong, is the main disagreement between the person who was reviewing this on behalf of the council and the applicant's expert was on build costs and also the gross development value, actually what they were going to sell for at the end. That was the disagreement that meant that the applicant's expert was saying it's not viable to provide affordable housing contributions, and our expert saying that he thought it was likely that it would be. So the clause that's proposed means that it would be agreed that effectively, once the development is constructed and marketed and sold, that we'd be then looking at what actually was the sale price, etc. And therefore, if it is at that higher end that we think it's likely to be, that there would be a clause for a certain effectively overage, so which would be a financial contribution towards the provision of affordable housing within Torquay. So that's what the 106 would achieve. There is an alternative in there, is that if the developer wanted to say, actually, I just would like to agree now a specific sum of affordable housing contributions, they could do that now and have the certainty of knowing what was to be paid. So that's why you've got the two options. At the moment, the applicant has indicated they want to go for the first bit that I mentioned, which is a later assessment to look at actual profitability to work out whether or not any payment can be made. So that's what would be drawn up, and with our solicitor's advice to make sure that obviously it's properly, appropriately worded so that we do get any overage out of that. That's my understanding of the situation.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, accurate.
Okay, thank you for that.
Councillor Manning, you were indicating?
Trouble is at the moment, as everything's going up, the same thing with the builders. Everything's going up in cost. And if we're not careful, we'll outprice it. What we need is houses. You know, it's very important to get houses. I know we need affordable houses as well, but we need houses. And if we start putting more and more pressure on the builders, they just won't build. So we've got to make sure we don't outprice ourselves, I think, in a way, because everybody's struggling, the builders as well. All their equipment and their stuff is going up and up in value, in cost, all the time. So it's making it hard for the builders these days. So we've got to be realistic about some of these things as well, I think, to be honest with you.
So, Councillor Chrysalis, are you satisfied with the provision, the 106 provision around affordable housing within the officer's recommendation as is?
Yeah, I was going to say, Chairman, yes, I am. We're talking about 5 affordable housing, if you read the report. So the committee have also got to weigh up, do we want Shedden Hill development to take place, yeah? Or are we going to block it for 5 affordable housing? The recommendation, I think, is a compromise where we're actually saying, well, look, you can put it up front now, or, you know, if the market takes off, if the cost of materials, as Councillor Manning has said, you know, come down in price because we're going through a volatile period, then we will be able to get the money for the affordable homes. So I think that that covers it. So I would still go with the recommendation as per the officers.
Councillor Manning, you still willing to second?
I'll second that, yeah.
Okay, so members, we have a proposal for approval as per the officer's recommendation in front of us. Mr. Jones, unless you've got anything else to to sum up with, I'm happy to move to the vote, unless you want to. Okay, in which case we'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. So that one, again, is unanimous. Okay, thank you. Members, we will move...
I just need to get the next people in, so...
Okay, in which case we will have a 5-minute break, actually. We'll have little and often as we approach the breaks this evening. So members, we'll take a brief 5-minute break. Please be back in your seat for 6:30, where we'll start on the next item. Okay, thank you, members. We'll resume the meeting now. So next application to consider being land to the north of Totnes Road, Cloddon St Mary, reference P 2021-1180. Mr. Jones is the case officer. Please give your presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just wait for the... There you go. Thank you. So this is the site of the application. It's the lower half of what's historically known as the car boot site on the northern part of the Totnes Road at Collerton St Mary. It's about 4.5 hectares in size, and it is a reserved matters application for 73 dwellings following the grant of outline consent with detailed access under P 2019-0604. So it is seeking detailed approval for the layout, the scale, the appearance and the landscaping. The outline application, just for note, approved a single vehicular access into the site with a right-hand designated turn in. So just as a brief refresh on the policy context of the site, it sits within the future growth area, which is identified in pink, and this is the site here. So obviously Collerton St Mary, there are other housing sites to the south of Totnes Road, the Torquay Motel site further outward bound, and also here opposite Ocean BMW on the hillside. So this is an aerial view, just to remind members of the site. So it's the pale triangular site on screen, and it's basically the lower half. So this is the low part of the site, and it rises steadily to the high point of the site near to the field access point around here. Just in terms of context, we see it's on the outskirts of Paignton in Collerton St Mary, surrounded by open countryside and agricultural uses. Further outward, obviously, there is some ribbon development along the Totnes Road here, and an accumulation of holiday parks further outside of Paignton on the Totnes Road. So this is just a closer view of the site. So we have, say, the high point here. Sorry, I'll just double check the laser pointer is working. There we go, that's better, sorry. So yeah, so this is principally the site here. Obviously it's close to the school further east, and the Great East Star listed church and associated parish buildings. And this is a street view down towards the site, inward bound. So we've got the contours of the site here, and the rolling hills in the background. And this is just a closer view showing the highs and low points of the site as well, just to give members some understanding of the topography. Just in terms of associated matters, this is the two existing bus stops adjacent to the site. So we've got the outward bound bus stop here with a pull-in bay, and we've got a bus stop here in carriageway. So part of the outline application is to deliver a designated pull-in bay for that bus stop as an enhanced sustainable travel facility. In addition, tied through the outline permission is the creation of a footway link from the eastern corner of the site, around here, along the highway verge, down to the school and the junction of with Blagdon Road. This will provide obviously enhanced connectivity and remove the need to cross over what is a busy main road. So this is actually an outline master plan that was submitted during the outline application, providing the general principles of what was being proposed. So we have an attenuation pond, water feature, and sorry, the laser pointer is not working, and communal orchard here, a play area in the high point of the site, near to the bus stop, and then a loose arrangement of houses around a single access point that then splits into a circular loop. And the plan obviously shows some irregular building lines and informality as a suggested response to the rural context. There's also some incidental areas of play, of open space, here and here within the site, proposed outline stage. Again, the outline commentary talked about breaking down the development and responding to the rural context and providing some different feels and characters as you move through the development, suggested in these sort of broad headlines. That was a different treatment in terms of street form, buildings, materials, and landscaping. So this is the proposed reserve matters layout. As mentioned, this is for 73 dwellings, 4 of these being flats. Open market housing is presented in mostly 3 and 4 bedroom units, although there are half a dozen 5-bed units within that as well. There are 22 affordable housing units which were secured through the outline permission, and these are a mix of 1 to 4 bed units, and they're dotted through the scheme in 4 sort of pockets, which I'll show you in a later slide. Again, consistent with the outline, there is a formal play area in the southwestern corner of the site near to the existing bus stop there, which will be equipped for play. And there is a large sort of green space, landscaped area near to the entrance in the southeastern corner of the site, which is partly an attenuation feature and wetland feature, and a communal orchard with some meadow planting as well. As you'll see, the layout follows the general principles presented at outline, with the single access road splitting to provide a sort of a circular road through the depth of the site. Again, there are the incidental public open spaces. So there's 3 main ones here, here and here through the scheme that just provide some relief and softens the built form as well. As mentioned, there are some off-site infrastructure improvements secured through the outline stage in terms of the pull-in bus bay, just here, and the continuation of, or the creation of a highway verge public and cycle route to the east down to the school and Blagdon Road. This will connect to this border treatment of a cycle pedestrian route along the southern boundary of the site to provide a continuous route connecting these facilities. So this is an affordable housing plan for the site. As mentioned, it's split into 4 pockets. So we have the orange units that here are the affordable rented units. So we have 4 units down here in the southern part of the site, and then some further up in the top corner. The green units are the social rent, which there are again 7 units of those, and the blue are shared ownership, and there are 8, providing 22 in total, which is 30% of the total number, which accords with the local plan policy. The affordable housing has been assessed by the council's housing officer and is described as a good offer and is supported. So this is a proposed materials plan for the scheme. I'll try and describe, obviously they are colour coded with lines, but I can appreciate it might not be that visible. So all the roofs are proposed in grey concrete tiles. The walls are a mix of materials. There are two types of red brick. There is a cream rough render, and also there are grey upper floor hanging concrete tiles as well. So, as a loose arrangement, the entrance to the site is generally presents a rendered form of housing. And then you move into tile hung area along the northern road here, indicated with blue. And then you go into a pocket around this green space in the northern corner of the site, where all the properties where you'll see a faint green line on the principal elevation are to be finished in stone. Again, as you sweep round to the western border, again there is a mixture of brick and hanging tiles, all formed to try and break down the scale of development and provide slightly different character through the development. So this is a boundary materials plan. So fencing is proposed within the private domain, so that's the private borders between plots, identified with blue lines, will be fenced. The public boundaries will be a mixture of brick walls or Devon banking to provide a sort of more robust materials and high quality materials, where enclosures face the public realm. So if you see a teal type of line, that's the Devon banks. So we've got a sweeping provision of Devon banks around the entrance. And this crosses over the road to some further areas of Devon banking, and then the public open spaces in the northern half of the site are also framed with Devon banks. In addition, there's some Devon banking down here, adjacent to the proposed play area. The pink are proposed railings, estate railings described as, and there are fencing and there's hedgerows as well to the frontages to try and soften the development and strengthen its landscape feel. So this is a proposed landscape scheme. So this has gone through some various iterations with the council's green infrastructure manager to try and ensure it's a very robust and positive scheme for what is a sort of rural context. So we've had some enhancements to the tree planting. We've had the introduction to some sort of specimen oak trees in the public open space pockets to provide those trees of presence over time, which will help break up the development when experienced within it, but also when experienced from longer views as well. There's the creation of a new field boundary along the western border, interspersed with some Devon banking and some trees. And there is a ecological corridor along the northeastern and northwestern boundaries here, which acts as a dark bat corridor chiefly, but also a wider ecological merit as well. So this corridor will be secure. The properties that back onto it do not have any rear gates, and there is hedging proposed adjacent to the private boundaries here. It will also be secured at either end, so it's secure from use and can be managed appropriately for its ecological value. At the entrance to the site, the attenuation pond is principally there for drainage reasons, where it acts as an attenuation pond that then feeds a controlled discharge to the watercourse, which runs along the valley floor along Blagdon Road, further north and east of the site. This will be connected by a proposed drain through the public highway, which will mean that obviously the drainage will be discharged at greenfield rates to the watercourse. In this area, there's also some informal orchard to add some ecological value and some community benefit. And the areas around that space will be planted with mixed meadow grassland as well for biodiversity value gains. So this is a plan of the proposed play area, which will have a number of different equipped play provision for children. And there's no objections from the Green Infrastructure team on what is being proposed. So this is a plan of the integrated ecology features to secure appropriate mitigation and enhancement for the scheme, which is on obviously a greenfield site, although principally one laid to grass. So there are principally this plan lays out proposals for a number of bird boxes, bat tubes, hedgehog gaps through the fencing, reptile habitation areas, bee bricks, insect houses, obviously the dark corridor that I touched on as well, to provide a robust and suitably detailed mitigation scheme for development on a greenfield site. This will be managed obviously partly through the LEMP and a number of the conditions in terms of monitoring light on the dark corridor. So here's some illustrations of the proposed house types through the schemes. So firstly, the open market ones, as mentioned, there's going to be a mixture of stone, brick, and a mixture of brick and hanging tiles. So all the roofs are proposed in concrete tiles, and the upper hanging tiles are proposed in concrete to match. Obviously, there's some commentary within the report on the proposed materials. You say the designs have been discussed and amended through the course of the application to try and provide a more contextually appropriate, simple gabled form of dwellings. Here's some of the affordable. As mentioned, they make a similar palette, although none of the affordable schemes sit within the pocket of stone buildings in the northern corner of the site. So just a couple of street scenes to try and sort of provide some understanding of how the development would sit when built out. The top view is the street view looking along the lower road within the site. So that's the road that backs onto the linear length, main length of the dark corridor. So here we've got the little enclave of stone-fronted buildings. And as you move to the right, you move into obviously the area that is a mixture of brick and slate. So the site levels provide some natural undulation within the scheme, which will add some sort of natural organic sort of feel and character to the building heights as they rise and fall through the development. The lower of the two elevations is looking at the upper road. So basically, if you're in the undeveloped part of the field adjacent, looking down on to the site, we're looking from left here, which these properties back onto the back corridor, the shorter length of it, and run across overlooking what is the newly created field margin with land outside of the site. So the committee report obviously covers the key issues and material considerations in detail. Just highlighted a few in bold just to quickly discuss on. In terms of the design and visual impact, there has been obviously some amendments through the course of the application. It's enhancing the landscape value of the site and also modifying the built form to try and provide a contextually appropriate development for the rural context. There remains some concern about the palette of materials being proposed, principally in terms of a move away from natural materials, which is sort of evident within the rural context and evident within the contextual assessment that supports the application. So there's a bit of a disconnect between the two, and it's questioned whether, you say, the use of concrete tiles is appropriate within the location. In terms of highways movement and parking, there are a number of relatively minor matters raised by the Highway Authority. We're currently working through some of the points raised, trying to work out what can be resolved, what is necessary, etc. None of the matters are considered to demonstrably alter the layout that is shown to members today. And principally, if there are amendments drawn out of the points still to be raised, it's more likely around minor tweaking of a curve to respond to a swept path, or a detailing of a service strip, and minor matters such as that. In terms of ecology, we've had some positive dialogue with the agent within the last few weeks, and we've had confirmation from Devon County Council, is the council's ecologists, that all ecological matters have now been adequately addressed, and there's no further points of concern or objection, and the recommendation to members will be amended because of that. In addition, flood risk has progressed following recent conversations, and the points raised by the council's drainage engineer have all been addressed, and he now supports the scheme. Finally, in terms of low carbon development, there are some conditions principally to respond to some unknowns within the submitted energy statement, and they can be adequately dealt with through the conditions that have been proposed. So the officer recommendation is updated to members, and it's one of approval subject to the resolution of the identified highway matters to be delegated to the Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergency. It no longer includes further matters of surface water drainage design. It no longer includes any ecological matters for consideration. And it retains the need for the conditions as outlined, but with final drafting of conditions delegated to the Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergency, subject to a detailed review of matters raised by the applicant's letter dated the 9th of December. In addition to the resolution of any new material considerations that may come to light following Planning Committee to be delegated to the Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergency, including the addition of any necessary further planning conditions and obligations. Just as a point of clarity, the officer recommendation regarding the conditions in response to the recent submitted letter are as follows. It principally, there is a proposal to remove the proposed LEMP condition as that is adequately dealt with through the remove the landscape maintenance condition as requested, as it is secured within the submitted LEMP document. Amend the wording of the electric charging condition as suggested to remove the need to submit the exact location and detail of each one. It would include the retention of the details of the levels of underbuild unless it has been submitted, which is suggested it has. And also a review of the wording of the detailed design condition, just to ensure that what is being proposed is proportionate and necessary. It's been requested to remove the ecological compliance condition, requiring the letter to be submitted as requested, and that is agreed as not a necessary condition. But it is recommended to members that we maintain the open space condition in order to ensure the proposed open space is provided as suggested. Again, the materials condition should be retained to try and seek natural materials to respond to the context and to respond to the contextual assessment submitted with the application. And the permitted development rights condition is considered reasonable and necessary in response to the layout and details submitted in the reserved matters, principally the importance of the landscaping to the front of the properties, and also the sensitivities of the site in terms of the levels and the potential for further extensions to buildings. The highway standards and adoptable roads maintenance conditions are considered necessary to secure an appropriate highway layout for highway safety and amenity reasons, but there is a revision to ensure that work isn't duplicated, which was the applicant's concern, and it's suggested that the secured by design condition is retained in order to secure proportionate understanding of the scheme's response to secured by design aspirations and the police design and crime officer's comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Members, we have one speaker on this item. I'd like to call forward Mr. Colin Danks, please. Welcome to the Planning Committee. Yes, please. You'll have a total of 5 minutes to address the committee, and I'll prompt you when you have 1 minute remaining, but make a start when you're ready to do so, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Good quality design and secure housing has a transformational impact on people. It aids physical health, mental well-being, children's educational attainment. It provides residents the incentive to invest in the local area, to thrive and to reach the fullest potential. A home of one's own is an important foundation for anyone seeking personal advancement, security and a stable future. Our development at Colleton St Mary not only provides homes for 73 families in an authority where there's over 1,000 families on the housing waiting list. It will also provide 283 new trees, 70 bat and bird boxes, Colleton St Mary's only current children's play area, a reduction in downstream discharge of water, meaning that our engineering design will reduce flood risk. These homes will be the most energy efficient Taylor Wimpey Exeter has ever built. They will provide 31% improvement in carbon emissions over current building regulations and ahead of the neighbourhood and local plans. These homes will have superfast broadband, electric vehicle charging, and will be designed to national space standards, as well as a £650,000 Section 106 funding contribution towards local services for education, recycling, sustainable transport. At the time, the Planning Inspector decided when this application was heard by committee in 2019, it should have clearly been permitted. This is still true now, and the proposals remain consistent with the Torquay local plan, Paynton neighbourhood plan, and the adopted development brief. In our view, the scheme should be permitted. If the Council would like to see more trees and greater biodiversity, the 31% reduction in carbon, the reduction to flood risk locally, secure funding for local schools and children's play area to support jobs and economic activity, then I ask the Council to support this scheme. If, as we believe, you are keen to deliver housing for those people on Torquay's waiting list, and for those wanting a home of their own to create transformational positive impact, we ask you to support and follow the case officer's recommendation for approval. Members, if I can just add one piece to that, you've heard about the conditions. The purpose of going through that process with the conditions is not to circumnavigate their obligations, it's because they're dealt with in other legislation, whether that's Section 38 for highways, whether that's under the building regulations for electric vehicle charging points. We are trying to work with an outline planning permission that already has conditions, and what our approach is to try and reduce the burden of work and assist delivery, a burden of work to your officers. So I hope that comes across slightly differently as it may seem on the screen. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer. If you do, you don't do questions. Okay. Thank you very much, Chair and members, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Thanks. Members, that concludes the speakers, so we now move for questions for the case officer. So I did have Councillor Manning's hand indicated much earlier, which I'll take now, and then I'll take Councillor Kennedy and then Councillor Barbara Lewis. But it's Councillor Manning first.
It sounds lovely, it does. But because you've got 75 houses, going to be a lot more children. Have we looked into whether we've got enough spaces to take children on? I understand at the moment we're short of spaces for children at school. Have we got enough doctor surgeries? You know, we have a job to get a doctor down this way. I don't know why, it's a lovely place to live, but they can't get doctors. So have we got enough space when we're building all these places for these people to be looked after properly and the children to go to school? You know, is there going to be spaces for them? Can you answer that question?
So obviously the outline consent has established the principle of 73 dwellings and obviously the context of what impact that has on infrastructure. The scheme will deliver education contributions in accordance with the Council's adopted SPD, so there will be obligations.
So will they build a new school? Because we'll need one, to be honest with you, to accommodate our children.
It'll provide obligations in accordance with the Council's adopted document in terms of helping to support the growth of schools.
And the doctor surgeries, have you been round to see whether there is enough capacity? Our doctor surgeries...
Sorry, Councillor Manning, I fear this is... much of this would have been dealt with at outline stage. Yeah. And I suggest that this probably isn't outline, when the outline application came in, probably some months, if not years ago now, would have been the time to visit those subjects. Unfortunately, we're here to consider the reserve matters, which was the presentation you saw Mr. Jones speak to.
You're probably right, but these matters need discussing. And we know to talk about the sewerage. Not being funny, we hear it on the television all the time. The overflow. Have we got capacity?
I'm sorry, Councillor Manning, I'm going to have to cut you off there, because in terms of, that opportunity was at outline application stage, and we are still doing reserve matters. So in being a robust decision-making body, we have to deal with what's in front of us this evening. Councillor Kennedy next, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to, sorry, I'm going to do the slowly bit again. I do fully understand what was said about the challenge on the conditions. There's a couple of the conditions I just want, because I haven't had time to read through the letter that we got while I was in another meeting. So, the first one on the surface water drainage system, is there a reason, was that secured during the outline planning? Sorry.
Yeah, so the principle of how surface water was to be dealt with was explored at outline stage. Obviously, the reserve matters needed to submit a detailed solution for that. And as mentioned in the report, that's to attenuate on site and then through a new drain to the watercourse to the northeast along Bragton Road, there'll be a controlled discharge at a greenfield rate. There's been some rounds of detail in order to ensure that the engineer is happy with all the pipe sizes, lengths, heights, the attenuation ponds, capacity, etc. And that's what's been sort of holding up support up until a few days ago. So that's now been sort of signed off. He supports it in accordance with what we now have in front of us, drainage-wise.
Thank you. And the second one is the ecological one, because it specifically mentions soil bunting and dormice. was there there was a CMP with the outline, was there or not?
I think the outline required a Kemp to be submitted, a construction and ecological management plan and a landscape ecological management plan to be submitted with the reserve matters. The concern of the ecologists was to do with some of the assumptions made. They've had some further clarification on that in terms of the site's unevolving character in terms of the likelihood of those species being present or not, and the need to build in some mitigation for that.
So is there something built in? I mean, is this either covered in the CEMP or Kemp, as you call it? Is it already covered, or are we missing? Is this bit going to be missed out?
Yeah. So the assumptions were that the character of the site hasn't changed, and hence the likelihood of cell buntings and dormice being present is unchanged. And there are safeguards within the construction and ecological management plan to pick those up rather than do separate surveys, which was the question. It wasn't an objection, it was a question being raised about lack of updated surveys. But it's cited that there's safeguards within the construction management plan to identify whether those species are present or not and how to deal with that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
I think Councillor Barbara, please.
Thank you, Chair. As regards to the parking, on page 92, it says all dwellings are supported by parking, which is a mix of driveway, garages, courtyard and off-street facilities. The driveways, are they going to accommodate 2 cars? I mean, if you're talking about houses with, 5 or 6 occupants, we all know that everyone's got their own car, so is that going to be adequate? And are the driveways including a garage, or is it a driveway or a garage?
So I've just popped it's the proposed landscape plan back on, but it obviously clearly shows you the driveways. It's generally 2 parking spaces plus garaging.
Right.
So when you're talking about if you see most of the layout, you've got the garages which are set deep in the plot. That's partly to try and break up the building lines, provide some space within the development, but it also obviously provides you with the capacity to provide 2 driveway spaces and a garage. There are some carports as well to try and provide some variety rather than relying on garages through the scheme in terms of covered parking. Again, that's a response to trying to provide some variety and character. And there are some pockets of obviously courtyard mews parking, like down here, close to the Totnes Road.
Are they're going to be clearly allocated and marked? It says on here.
Yes.
On page 99.
Yeah. So what?
I mean, obviously there is a call. It says there is a cause of concern because of the parking issue. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. So I think there's a condition that identifies that the visitor, the parking needs to be demarked before it's used, and obviously that includes making sure that where there is visitor parking proposed, that's marked as visitor parking, so people who visit the site know that.
So for the houses that haven't got parking or a garage,
they'll
be allocated with numbered parking bays on them.
Yeah. So all houses have 2 car parking spaces. So the larger houses will have that on a mixture of driveways and garages or carports. Where there's a mews arrangement, there'll be allocated parking 2 spaces, but in the larger mews one near Totnes Road, I think there's maybe a couple of visitor spaces within that from memory.
Just a quick one about the electric charging points. Is it going to be 1 each house, or how many in total?
Yeah,
or
that's
20% as...
Yeah, so the policy level is 1 per dwelling. Apartment schemes, it's 20%. That's what the local plan seeks. And the
so it's 1 per dwelling?
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Christers, please.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can draw your attention to the highway authority, and it says outstanding points regarding highways matters. Comes to about 14 points, which is highly unusual that these points haven't been agreed before it actually comes to council, comes to this committee. Can you tell me why we're taking on trust that these will be done? I know you said they were minor matters, but when the Highways Authority is Swissco, wholly owned subsidiary of Torquay Council, why couldn't these points have been cleared up before it came to committee?
So some of these points are historic, some of them are new, some are considered relevant, some are not. So I've tried to provide some officer comment within, appended to the highway comments within the list. So obviously, yes, there's a number there, but a number of them either, like the first one, personal injury collision data for 5-year period. Obviously, the outline consent has been achieved for 73 dwellings off a detailed access point with a right-hand turn.
Well,
so requests like that.
Funny you should bring that one up, because that's the one that stood out. When you've got highways, and I know Councillor Jackie Thomas was very strong about this when it came to outline. But when the highways are actually saying that they want the data for the latest available 5-year period, and then we as a planning authority are saying, well, you don't really need it. But anyway, my point is that I think it would be helpful for the committee if these sort of things, when it's in-house, could be resolved before it comes to committee. I'm just making that observation. And I think it would be helpful for us, rather than going through 14 points and for you to have to make comments. I can't see a reason why they're not resolved before they come.
Yeah, so obviously, a number of the points are covered through the outline, through other conditions that the Highway Authority haven't picked up on or appreciated. So you can have rounds of conversations trying to explain what to remove. So I've tried to summarise what is already covered off through other measures, whether it's conditions or documents that have been submitted. As mentioned, I think the majority of the outstanding ones are minor layout matters of service strips, etc. But you say, what you would think is the most substantial one, the injury data, the amount of development and the detailed access in and out of the highway network has been approved in detail. So I don't see that there's any sort of substantial reason why you would request that through a reserved matters. It's principally about ensuring that the internal layout is fit for purpose.
Okay, I think I've made my point, Trevor. And I apologise for wearing my coat. I think it's an age thing. I'm quite chilly.
As I said at the beginning, that's given how chilly it is, if members want to put on an extra layer, that's absolutely fine in circumstances. There's Councillor Kennedy, please.
I'm happy to propose that we approve as per officer recommendations.
I'll come back to you first, Councillor Kennedy. So jumping into debate stage, but any debates? If not, I will go straight back to Councillor Kennedy and just to confirm that proposal, please. Yes.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yep, okay.
Sorry, yes. Caught me off guard.
Okay, so that's a proposal for approval as per the officer's report, and Councillor Dudley?
Happy to second as per officer's recommendation.
Okay. In which case, I think I'll move straight to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. So that's unanimous. That one is carried. Okay, great. We shall move to the next application, which is the application for the former Magistrates Court, Union Street, Torquay, reference P 2020-0969. Okay. I'll wait until it's be formally correct. I'll wait till Councillor Kennedy's back in the room. Thank you. Mr. Jones, once again, this is yours, so please give your presentation when you're ready, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just be a second. So yes, thank you. So this is the former Magistrates Court on the junction of Union Street with Tremerton Avenue, as identified in red on the slide in front of you. Sits just within the town centre, adjacent to the Town Hall car park, to the south of Castle Chambers, which is a Grade 2 listed building, and to the west of St Mary Magdalene's Church, which is a Grade 2 star listed building. There are also a number of listed buildings around the civic buildings of the Town Hall. So this is a detailed application for the extension and conversion of the building with some partial demolition to provide 14 residential apartments, 13 two-bed apartments and 1 three-bed apartment. Sorry, but the slide show is not working. Sorry, it does. Thank you. So this is an aerial photo of the site, loosely outlined in red by myself, just for ease. You see its relationship with the listed buildings to either side, northwest and southeast, and overlooking the car park on lower ground. So this is the designations map from the Torquay local plan. The light blue indicates the upper extent of the designated town centre. So this is the site just here. Sorry, I think, there you go. Try and get the laser pointer for you. So that's the site just there, right on the outer extent of the town centre. It's also adjacent to the car park here, which is identified potential development site. The red toothed lines just signify that it's within the Upton Conservation Area, and obviously that's the boundary with the adjacent Tormowen Conservation Area. So this is the Torquay neighbourhood plan. The purple lines again identifying the town centre. The site just up here. Also identifies some green space. So we've got Memorial Gardens to the west, just here. And then Upton Park is a green space just on the outer extent of this slide, but also designated as a sport and leisure facility as well, both within close proximity and would serve future occupants in terms of outdoor space and recreation. So this is a street view of the existing building. It's a pleasant stone finished 2-storey flat roof with some underbuild, as you'll see as we turn the corner in a second. Windows generally modern plastic. And as you turn around the junction of Union Street with Tremerton Avenue, this is a view of the building. You see some, obviously, a little bit of roof clutter. This section here is part of the proposed demolition, so it's proposed to bring the building line back in line with the main element of the building here and create a walled courtyard at lower ground floor level. This will present a slightly better arrangement and relationship with the public realm, where it's quite a dominating building at the moment. So this is a view from Magdalen Road, just looking across at the site. So you've got the main stone building here. There's a small elevated link with vehicle access below to a covered car parking area that served the previous use. Underneath here is obviously car parking as well. You'll see through the gap, and further space at first floor level or ground floor level if you run across from the main building. This is grey brick with render bands. And this is a view from the rear overlooking Town Hall car park up at the site. See pleasantly detailed Castle Chambers there on the right hand side, and the trees on the left hand side that sit within St Mary Magdalene Church boundaries. There's a small outbuilding adjacent to it from the associated with the church. And here you'll just notice the undercroft area below the rear wing. So moving on to the proposals. Here we have the proposed parking, cycle and waste layout. So we have a gated access using the current access into the undercroft area. So that's a secure environment. And we have parking on a 1-for-1 basis. That's 14 spaces to serve 14 apartments. That accords with local plan policy in terms of 1 space per apartment, but it's not particularly necessary in this town centre location, which is obviously well located, has sustainable transport options and walking options to services, etc. And a lower level of parking could have easily been argued as acceptable. We've got cycle parking as well. Like I say, it's a gated, secure facility here. So we've got some within the undercroft adjacent to the car parking, and some within this walled and gated area to the side of the building. So the lower ground floor area provides bin storage and general storage area. And to the right hand side is the first apartment. There'll be a single aspect towards the church. So running through the accommodation proposed for the scheme. This is the lower ground floor. So the purple is a 2-bed apartment facing the church. So we've got a number of windows along that aperture and an outlook that is, although shaded by trees, is a green outlook and is considered acceptable in terms of amenity. Moving through the schemes, the main building is divided principally into 4 quarters, providing double aspect apartments as colour coded here, and we've got the sole 3-bedroom apartment within the sort of annex element of the building there in the salmony pink at the top of the slide. That's accessed through its own stairway within the current build, and there is the existing building line in this corner is recessed to provide a covered balcony facility and some outdoor space for that unit. As you'll note along this side, we now have a regular building line with the extending element demolished and returned, and the stone reused to provide a matching external finish. So this is the proposed first floor. Again, generously appointed apartments, outdoor spaces through balconies here and here, and we've got some front-facing balconies for the 2 units facing Union Street. And this is the upper floor. So this is within a proposed extension above the existing flat roof, where there's a double gabled roof with dormers and a central flat roofed section in the middle. Here again, there's some outdoor space for these apartments at the front with a terrace recessed within the centre, and at the back with some balconies overlooking the Town Hall car park. Again, the apartments, as with all of them, are generously appointed, exceed the national space standards and have good outlooks. So this is a section of the scheme. Obviously shows how the annex towards the rear sits in relation to it, how you've got this communal sort of service court, undercroft with parking and cycle facilities, etc. And the red dotted line is the existing building, just there. So you've got the additional height, which is, as I'll go on to show you, is within like a double gabled, stone-fronted design. So this is the proposed principal elevation that fronts Union Street. So we've got new windows, we've got a feature door section here, and we've got the extension here at roof level with 2 stone-fronted gables, reusing the stone from within the scheme, and providing a modern seamed roof within the middle. So this is the rear, again showing the two gables. This is slightly more modern in appearance with large glazed elements. And this central line section is a standing seam extending from the roof down in the middle of the gables. And this is a view looking along Tremerton Avenue at the flank, the main principal external public face of the building. So you've got the extension element here at roof level, again with a modern material that's considered acceptable in the context. Provides some nice contrast in terms of a clearly sort of modern addition at roof level. We've got some dormers here, appropriately proportioned, and refigured window openings to provide some uniformity through the building with a mixture of obviously metal railings, and there's some glass balustrades as well. This is the side elevation facing the church. Similarly detailed. And this is a proposed image that's been submitted as part of the application to give you an understanding of the design that's aspired to. So we've got the stone-fronted principal elevation and featured doorway here, and the recessed roof terrace in between. So the roof offers a nice modern contrast to the building, along with the clad dormers. There's some discussions around this corner element, which is proposed to provide some part of the external space for that apartment. We're just in discussions about the height of the wall and maybe the line that it takes to try and present a less sort of brutal face around the corner and make a slightly more open character. So behind this element we have at lower ground floor, you've got the open courtyard behind the stone wall. So this is just an existing and a proposed comparison image that provides some sort of reflection on how it seeks to take some reference off Castle Chambers on the left-hand side, which I mentioned was Grade 2 listed building. Notice the stone gable there, which presents some positive reflection of. You also noted in terms of scale, it's still obviously a relatively small building within this part of the town centre, which are a number of much taller buildings. And this is a comparison image to the rear. Again, obviously existing at the top and proposed, you'll see the gables peeking over the retained annex. And the main change here is, this covered balcony area, which is going to be created out of the existing floor space. So the key issues have again been covered in detail within the committee report for members. I've highlighted 3 in bold here, which are considered to be the key matters of discussion for this one. In terms of the principle of development, again, it's a very sustainable location. It's a building that's not been used for a number of years now, and will help provide much needed housing within a very central and sustainable location with a good quality level of amenity, with good access to central parks and shops and services. In terms of design and visual impact, the scheme is considered well resolved for its context. There's some minor discussions, as I mentioned, around the detail of the corner wall and what exact height and alignment that takes, and also in terms of the detailed design to pick up on the topping detail of walls in the area. In terms of residential amenity, as I mentioned, there's a number of terraces and balconies to provide outdoor space, although there are parks within close proximity. and the internal living environments are well proportioned and exceed national space standards. So most of the apartments are dual aspect, to provide good outlooks and light, and the single aspect unit at lower ground floor level is considered acceptable considering the level of glazing and although shaded, the soft outlook of trees is considered a pleasant one. So the recommendation to members is one of approval subject to the conditions as outlined, with final drafting delegated to the Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergency, and the resolution of any new material considerations that may come to light following Planning Committee to be delegated to the Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergency, including the addition of any necessary further planning conditions or obligations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. And members, we are once again joined by Ms. Forbes-Hamilton, who speaks on behalf of the Torquay Neighbourhood Forum. Welcome back, Ms. Forbes-Hamilton. You will have a total of 5 minutes to address this committee, and I'll prompt you at 1 minute, but make a start when you're ready to do so, please.
Thank you, Chair. This statement has been reviewed and approved by the steering group of the Torquay Neighbourhood Forum. The forum did not submit a consultee response owing to time pressures on our volunteer members. We submitted a response objecting to the previous submission for this building, P/2021/0266. This new proposal is a considerable improvement, and we are aware of engagement with the community partnership. A review of the local plan and neighbourhood plan policies shows good compliance. We note that there have been no objections to this new proposal. The forum supports the recommendation for approval subject to the listed conditions. I'd now like to comment as chair of the Torquay Upton Community Partnership. As the court sits within our area, I invited the architects to present the plans to one of our meetings. Attendees included business owners from straight across the road and representatives from St Mary Magdalene Church next door. There was good discussion, relationships were built between the church and the architects, and everyone was pleased that consideration was being taken of the situation being between two listed buildings. It was a very positive meeting, and that was really great. So I would just like to say thank you very much, and I hope it all goes ahead quickly.
Thank you, Ms. Forbes-Hamilton. So, members, we now move to questions for the planning officer. I saw Councillor Hill's hand first, and I'll take Councillor Kennedy and then Councillor Dudley, but Councillor Hill first.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you go back to the wall on the outer wall, not just the height? Is any pavement going to be lost on that? Because it seemed to be, there we are, because I don't recall there being a wall there at present, and the property coming right up to the boundary line.
There's a low wall there at the moment. This proposes to raise the wall, and that raises some officer concern in terms of closing off the visual link of the corner. And also the impact on a historic pillar that currently sits. So if we go back to one of the street views, you should be able to see that there's an existing wall there. Just going up, there we go. So you've got that little planted section on the corner. So that's all part of the site. Like I say, at the moment, you say you've got some visual link through the corner. I'm a little bit concerned about not only obscuring that, but also providing a sort of an obscured entrance to the a disability ramp that exists and is going to be retained. And also behind the one-way, there's a historic sign there with the blue arrow. There's a pillar, and raising the wall could have some impact on that. So we're just trying to tease out a detail that maybe provides a more satisfactory resolution.
Can I just ask, how far is the wall from the building itself? How many feet, meters, centimetres, whatever your measurement is in?
So this is the proposed ground floor. So the wall, obviously the line of the wall is already set with the low wall, and this is the pillar that they show is retained, but we're slightly concerned about its impact if you're obviously raising the wall substantially. So we've discussed about maybe retaining a low wall here and possibly bringing the wall across to the building. But it needs a little bit of thought because you've got access to a private sort of garden terrace there. So ideally you want to ensure there's sufficient security for that, you know, from the public realm. So it's something that needs to be teased out. I think there's a better solution than what's there at the moment.
Well, as long as that can be looked at, then you know, I'm happy with what you've said.
I'll take Councillor Kennedy next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got to say, I kind of like that wall. It does reflect what's going on the other side of the road, but anyway, that's each to their own on that. I think we've got a bit of a conflict between highways and planning again, because there are some issues which highways brought up, and I've looked, and in your report, I'm not sure that all of them have actually been covered. So you have covered the cycle parking. Further consideration is also required as to delivery and servicing of the proposed apartment in the annex. I may have missed that one. A revised layout is required for the proposed gated vehicle access, so it aligns with the required design standards, and further evidence is required as to the feasibility of the proposed car park layout. Your officer report does cover things slightly, but doesn't specifically cover those items, I don't think.
So in terms of the sort of service access to the annex, that is principally a operational issue for the occupants, but it is covered through a secured by design condition. So how you get you know, postal access, delivery access to that unit, part of secured by design is about safe and secure access. The police often comment about what types of communal systems you have, entrance, etc. So the proposed secure by design condition would hopefully bring forward an appropriate response to that concern, even though it's a cross profession. You know, it's proposed, it's been raised by highways, and it's sort of designing out crime method to secure it. The gate has been moved, so there's 6 metres to the edge of the carriageway, which is the request by highways.
I missed that one then.
Sorry, and the parking there has been a swept path provided.
It did look a little bit odd, I've got to say, on the picture, but I don't know if that was...
Yeah, so it's obviously a working arrangement at the moment. So there is a swept path provided that shows access to at least one of the spaces. The spaces all accord with your general expectations in terms of sizes and arrangement. The scheme could potentially be acceptable without parking at all because of its town centre location. So it's good that it proposes 14. Obviously, we don't want to try and ingrain any occupier conflict by having spaces that don't work. But in terms of the layout, it appears workable, and there is a swept path that has responded since the initial comment from highways.
Okay, so...
It doesn't show everyone working, but I imagine it would look like Spaghetti Junction if it did, and you wouldn't really...
No, I get that, but it did look a little bit tricky.
Yeah.
With the best will in the world. So I didn't know if that's what highways were kind of like trying to get at, but you know, the layout and if it could be improved on, or I mean, is there an intention to go back to highways with regard to the final designs?
I'll just have a quick look at I'll just have a quick refresh of their comments. Sorry. To my mind, they've submitted information that addresses the concerns. Whether that's technically been signed off by highways, possibly not. To me, they've asked for 6 metres, they've received 6 metres. They've asked for sweat paths, they show a sweat path. The size of the spaces generally accord. There might be ones that are slightly tighter at the end. There is an option to remove those, but you want to provide parking, but it's sort of an added bonus. But I understand if there's concerns about occupier attention if it doesn't work. But you say it could be a car parking free development and quite happily have support at the same time because of its town centre location.
Sorry. So these are they kind of have they got garage doors or they're open spaces?
Yeah, so that's an open, that's sort of a covered undercroft. So it's open spaces. I think you probably have a. So through the gap under the annex on the left-hand side of that, you've got what's there at the moment is the parking facility. It's obviously worked for a different type of use. So it's basically covered but communal.
Councillor John Burden, please.
So, Scott, what was it before? It was a magistrates' court with this amount of interest.
I think it was a school. A school linked to the church. I possibly touched on it in the report. Yeah, it was a school originally. Yeah.
If we're going into the debate stage, I'd be quite happy to propose it as per officer's recommendation. I really like the proposal. So
once we reach that stage, Councillor Dudley, I'll come straight back to you. Councillor Chris Lewis, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. If I can take you back to the wall, I think we have got to be quite careful when you say reduce the size of the wall. If you look at the police designing out crime officer, and I'll read it out. It is respectfully requested a condition is in place so that any low walls surrounding the development are designed so not to have a flat top or in any way which will prevent the wall becoming an informal seating area for people or large groups to congregate. Reason to prevent the fear of crime and antisocial behaviour. So I think we've got to be careful. You know, the developer may have actually looked at the police recommendation and decided to have a higher wall for that reason. So I think we have to be careful if we're going for a lower wall, then we're not going against the police recommendation. Thank you.
Would you like a comment on that? Yeah. So the comments regarding low walls and sitting and antisocial behaviours is appreciated, and as a condition in order. There's obviously a cock and hen type finish to stone walls in the area, and that would possibly accord with what the police expectations are. So we wouldn't want to design in crime. So if we were trying, there's some issues around having a blind spot on that access point from this created wall. Obviously it turns around and goes back. So you have a blind spot there, which isn't currently there, and you wouldn't have if you had a wall that goes straight back to the building. But you also don't want a low wall to a private garden terrace that could be jumped. So it's a matter of, yeah, it's trying to find the best solution that gives you the outcomes for on all those points.
Okay, thank you.
There's no further questions, members. We'll move to debate. Any debate, members? If not, I'll go straight back to Councillor Dudley, who previously indicated a willingness to propose approval. Councillor Dudley, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'd be happy to propose as per officer's recommendation.
Could I have is there a seconder? Councillor Manning seconding that. Okay, I don't think there's any need for summing up or any further debate, so we'll move to the vote on this one. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Once again, that is unanimous. Thank you, members. Members, we move to the very last application of the evening, which is land at Princess Gardens off Torquay Road, Torquay, P2022-1032. Surprise, surprise, Mr. Jones is the case officer and will present now.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just be a second. So, yes, thank you. So this is an application for land at Princess Gardens, Torquay, for the 1-year placement of an observation wheel and associated infrastructure. So the site is outlined in red and is the site of the most recent applications and approvals for a wheel in this location. So this is an aerial view of the site. Within it, so this is the location of the proposed wheel. The aerial view has a previous wheel in situ there. I think that's a slightly larger wheel, a 50-metre permission from a few years ago. But you just see it's an established location within the listed park and garden. So just in terms of reminding on context, we have the listed war memorial here and the listed fountain, which are listed items within the registered park and garden. Obviously the pavilion's a little bit further east. So this is the neighbourhood plan designations, identifying the gardens as a local green space. And the Torquay local plan, which again identifies the listed park and garden, that it's in the Torquay Harbour Conservation Area and also in a core tourism investment area and a community investment area. So this is the photo looking towards the area of the wheel, past the fountain and the war memorial, on the land between the war memorial and the theatre. And looking back towards Torquay Road, this is obviously the area where the wheel would be placed. And just the layout, you see an established belt of street trees there to the north. Other than that, the main thoroughfare is around the southern extent of the registered park. So as mentioned, this is a 1-year application for the placement of a 33-metre observation wheel and associated infrastructure. This is the precise location of it, which matches that of previous applications. Have distances to the listed war memorial, providing adequate separation, and also separation between the wheel and the trees, partly because as per the more recent wheel, it's a slightly smaller wheel at 33 metres over the 50-metre wheel that preceded it. Again, we've got the catering unit on the seaward side and offices within the footprint of the wheel. possibly know what the wheel looks like. There's been various iterations over the years within the park. So this is the type with the sort of open covered, canopy covered seating. And the ticket booths are, as per previous applications, simple, temporary type structures. They say will be sat close within the footpads of the wheel. So here we have another aerial view showing how it sits from the bird's eye view. So this is a photo of a similar sized wheel. As you see, the design matches what's currently proposed. So this is the 33-metre wheel from the previous year. That's looking from the seaward side back towards the wheel, peeking over one of the trees there. So the key issues and material considerations have been outlined within your report. As with previous applications, the key issues are really balancing the heritage considerations, the harm from placing a temporary structure of this scale in a registered park and garden adjacent to listed structures, against the potential heritage gains being proposed within each application, including this one. In terms of the heritage gains, it's proposed to secure a conservation obligation of £20,000 to go towards the restoration of the listed war memorial, which was partly funded from the previous year's application, but no works have been undertaken. So there is obviously a balance of harm from placing an alien structure against the gains of securing some medium and longer term benefits against those short-term harms. Aside that, you have the economic and tourism considerations. Obviously, the wheels are located, few and far between around the country. They are quite a landmark, and obviously perceived as quite a popular and positive attribute, adding some activity to the seafront area. So this is going back to the heritage balance. This is some pictures of the war memorial. There's a little bit of stone damage, some general degradation of the stone, and also the etchings within it. And just in terms of appreciating some of the gains of the past, obviously this is a historic picture of the wheel, or not the wheel, of the fountain. Slightly wonky and subsiding, as you'll probably see it dipping slightly, and in general sort of looking a little bit tired. And this is obviously what previous wheel funding has helped secure. Say a fully addressed the subsistence, and refreshed the listed fountain. So, as identified within the report, there are still considered sufficient conservation gains within the registered park in terms of, a demonstrable piece of work to upgrade and refresh the listed structure adjacent, which is the war memorial. So the officer recommendation is one of approval, subject to securing conservation gain to the sum of £20,000 secured through a legal agreement, and the conditions as outlined with the final drafting of conditions delegated to the Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergency, and along with the resolution of any new material considerations that may come to light, following Planning Committee to be delegated to the Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergency, including the addition of any necessary further planning obligations or conditions. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Members, we don't have any registered speakers on this item, so do we have any questions for the case officer? Okay, in which case, any debate, members? No debate, any proposals? Councillor Dudley, please.
Just happy to propose as per planning officer's recommendation.
Indeed. And a seconder, please. Councillor Hill, I saw first there. Just please, Councillor Hill, just confirm that you're happy to second. Okay, thank you. Okay, no need for any further comment, I think, so we'll move straight to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That is once again unanimous. I think that was your first for this committee. That everything's been unanimous tonight. So that's the last application. That was the last application. So all I have to say is have a very nice Christmas and lovely New Year. Thank you.